Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast. This is a weekly program focused on the relevant topics in Freemasonry and the various aspects of the craft. Any opinions, thoughts, or viewpoints shared during this program are that of the individual and do not reflect the position of any Grand Lodge, appendant, or concordant body from which that member may hail. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, Editor-in-Chief of Craftsman Online, and joining me this week, worshipful brother Jason Lee. Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. For those of you following at home on the podcast and not on the silver Patreon tier, I am in a full tuxedo, but not because our host asked me to, just because that's how I dress.
He is the past master of my lodge here in Washington, D.C., St. John's Lodge number 11, and will be dearly missed as his time in the East is done and will be relocating himself to Germany. We're not going to get into that on this podcast, but his humor and his bright light is something that I will miss in the short amount of time that I've gotten to know him. We're going to be talking tonight about the meaning of conductors. And this was one of those lines that you started talking about this in a lodge meeting, and it reminded me of a movie scene where like, shh, quiet, let him finish, let him get to this point. So if we could kind of take those steps back, where were you, what were you watching, and what was the thought that came to your mind when it came to the role of conductors in our ritual?
The process started with my first rising to the Oriental chair and looking at my program and really having a lot of focus and hope for the fraternity that I wanted to grow. I wanted to bring in new Masons. I was looking forward to all of the events that we were going to plan. Big fan of breweries, winery tours, places that we can go with the family and let the kids run around, all of which came to an abrupt stop when everyone went into lockdown and all lodge meetings completely halted. And in DC, we had a very possibly rare opportunity, possibly unique, I'll actually say, where we started conducting first virtual happy hours and then virtual lodge meetings, up to and including virtual Grand Lodge meetings. And because of these events, we were able to pull brothers who are still on the rosters of our lodge, but have moved away. So we had brothers calling in from Southern Florida, from Indiana, from Santa Fe, from New York, from South Carolina, all joining us for official lodge opportunities, meetings. And we really wanted to keep some of that synergy going when eventually 18 months later, we started in-person lodges again. And I think anyone who's looked around at what pre and post pandemic, pre-new normal is for their lodge, you are seeing a lot of the same things that we are seeing. You have your people who are showing up, they're starting to get burned out. We're all dealing with pandemic exhaustion. And we as a fraternal organization are struggling to keep our people involved. More so now, post-pandemic, than pre-pandemic. And what this started me thinking about is, in my lodge in particular, we have about a 50 to 75% attrition rate on bringing masters into the lodge and having them continue. So we have a pretty steady pipeline, 3 to 4 entered apprentice Masons every year, bringing them through to the Master Mason degree. And at the 1 year mark from having made them masters, we're lucky if we have 2 of them. And that is, sort of the math that we're seeing across fraternal organizations such as ours generally. People get in, they move, they become uninterested, the length of their cable tow is tightened, they can't attend. For whatever reason they come up with, Masonry isn't drawing them in. And there's a lot of reasons that are out there, a lot of things that lodges can do to help with that, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What I saw as the worshipful master, looking down at my lodge, at my officers, was that I had been very often a poor conductor. I had brothers who, some of them were past masters, We had an entered apprentice who sat as an entered apprentice basically for 2 years because he was made an EA in March, and 3 days later we went into lockdown. We had all of these different personalities, some of whom had a lot of energy, some of whom not so much. And it was my job as the worshipful master, the ultimate answer in the lodge, to help conduct not only those individuals as a group, but those individuals independently. And there were little things that I tried to do. I tried to send out letters to people who were getting demits. Not demits. I tried to send out letters to people who were getting NPDs, non-payment of dues, reach out to them. I, spent 2 years, because my 1 year in the East ended up becoming 2 back to back. I spent 24 months writing Masonic birthday cards to every member at every age. I did as much as I could to reach out and physically be present with as many of our brothers as possible. But ultimately, at the end of the day, with about 75 people on our active roster, we have an attendance between 5 and 15. 15 is an exceptional day. Then post-pandemic, we're looking at events where we're having trouble opening in order to actually hold a degree because we don't have enough people present. At one point, I had to improvise opening on the Master Mason degree, then drawing all the way down to the entered apprentice degree so that our EAs could come in and participate in the education that we were having and actually have them experience lodge. It was an ordeal that none of us had practiced for, but we made our way through it. And as I was approaching the end of my tenure, I recognized those failings. There's no sight like hindsight. And I looked at those individuals who had drifted away from Masonry, who had continued to say things like, "Oh, well, I'll sit as a deacon, I'll sit as a steward wherever you want me, but I'm not going to commit to moving any further up." Those individuals who told me in so many words, "I've been sitting on the phone talking to people for 8 hours on Friday. By the end of the week, I'm 40 hours into doing nothing but chit-chatting with people for my job, and it just stresses me out and exhausts me to put on a suit, get in a car, drive all the way down to the lodge, hang out, and listen to people bicker about what kind of hot dog we should be serving." It was very difficult for them to admit that to me, and it was very difficult for me to hear that this was what I had a problem with in Masonry, and my time in the East had in many ways still become that. So I was the conductor of the lodge. And one of the things that really stuck out with me as I was making these realizations was, in my background, I also have 11 years of music throughout high school, college, actually paid gigs. And one of the very early things that you realize when you're playing with any type of an ensemble, whether it's a quartet all the way up to an orchestra, marching band, whatever, you have a conductor. And that conductor gets a whole lot of credit. But at the end of the day, the conductor could walk away, and a well-practiced professional organization is going to keep on performing. In fact, whenever a conductor is highlighting a soloist, the conductor completely stops. The conductor does nothing and lets the soloist perform until it's time to bring the orchestra back into the piece that's being performed. And that realization that the conductor should be present, should provide wisdom, but also know when they need to back away and let a star shine. One thing that I will, I don't want to say take credit for, because the credit is entirely to our worshipful brother who organized it, but St. John's recently celebrated its 175th anniversary. And I basically did nothing. And the reason is we had one past master who this was what he wanted. He wanted to have an amazing event. And I knew enough that this guy could handle it. And about 15 days out from the event, I could tell that it was slipping away from me. And I asked him, Sam, what do you need? And he gave me a list of 15 things. All of them took 5 minutes to complete, but they were just too much for him to handle. I split that list up. I got 3 people involved. I said, hey, brother A, you're handling 1, 2, and 3. Brother B, you're handling 4, 5, and 6. Nobody objected. We got it all done. We knocked it out in a week, and everything came through smoothly. I didn't do any of the actual work. I just helped coordinate it when it needed to be done, and I let the brothers who can handle it. That was my success. Where my failure was on those smaller individual scales, those keeping brothers involved, invested, and interested. And that's where I was a bad conductor, more in the Masonic sense. So all of this started for me when our treasurer, also past master of St. John's Lodge, was attending a table lodge, and he heard the quote, "Arise, follow your conductor, and fear no danger." And that realization that at your point in becoming a Mason, you're hoodwinked. This is something that is happening to you. You're not participating in it. You have nothing but questions. There's the possibility that there are hands touching you that you have no idea who they belong to, and you really can be expected to be on high guard. But if you're listening to those lines and you understand this is a choice that I have made, it's something that I want to do, and there's someone here who is conducting me through it, I can let go of that autonomy and be part of this. You know, the phrase, youth is wasted on the young. In the same way, the entered apprentice degree is wasted on a candidate. I don't remember anything from my entered apprentice degree except for the fact that I had a nipple ring and it was causing a whole lot of problems. And I was, hey, give me a pair of pliers. It's coming out. This isn't going to stop me. And from that disarming moment on, when people were genuinely freaking out about the fact that I had metallic body piercing, and nobody knew how to handle it, and nobody would explain to me why, and nobody had any answers for me, everything after that just came out as a 40-cycle hum. I don't know what was going on. It was lost to me. Fortunately, 2 days after my entered apprentice degree, I was able to attend an EA degree at another lodge and watch it. And it was like mind blowing, that realization, oh, that's what happened there. Oh, this is what was going on. I could listen to the different things that were being said. They played this ancient recording that I think was literally copied from a record onto a reel-to-reel, onto a cassette tape, and then transferred onto a CD, because I distinctly heard the pushing of buttons on the recording.
What was the recording of?
It was the different passages from the Bible.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was a hymn or something.
But it was set to the classic, and he walked forward, and it was a great time, and everyone rejoiced. Right. I could actually listen to all those things with so much more clarity because I had experienced them literally 48 hours previously and was now watching them. And the conductors who were there, now fast forwarding 7 years or whatever it's been since my degree and my realization, well, it's been a lot more than 7 years, 10 years since my entered apprentice degree, and the realization of the importance of these conductors, and focusing on the fact that I have no idea who my conductor was. Nobody can tell me. Conductors are an afterthought, but really, fundamentally, at every level of the degree, they are the most important person. You know, I was having a thought about this for those of you listening at home who don't know. Your gracious host also provides a list of questions. And if you read them, you realize how much you don't actually know about the subject you're trying to talk about. So I was doing some study before I got on. I started recognizing that, particularly in our lodge and in most lodges, the conductor is almost an afterthought. Yes, it's on our list of cast members that we have to come up with. But aside from the conductor and everything after the big reveal, you could literally have a speaker in every corner of the lodge and just play recordings, and no one would know that you weren't doing it live. Obviously, if you recorded it from a 78 onto an MP3, you'd have some static. But the reality is, I know people who in 45 minutes of editing could piece together the entire, all 3 degrees, have it set up, laser trip lights. So as you walked by, the degrees started playing. You would never know that there wasn't a human there, but for the fact that there is a person guiding you through this process. And as the candidate, as the Mason being escorted, conducted, you don't realize that you are being put closest to the altar. You don't realize that you are being faced in the directions of importance. You don't realize that you are being vouched for through this journey. And the significance of that conductor, I think, is really being lost in our lodge. I can't speak for anybody else's. There's probably some fantastic lodge out there where the conductor is assigned from the moment a person says, like, hey, I think I'd like to become a Mason. And that person stays with them through their entire journey and helps them study and really keeps them jazzed. But for me, yeah, that mythical St. John's number 1 up there, I hear they do some great stuff. But the reality is, I have shown up as a speaking part in degrees and watched the lodge scramble to figure out who's going to be a conductor because somebody didn't show up. You know, when we do a courtesy, there's like 2 requirements that we have. You have to pay the courtesy fee and you have to bring a conductor. Like if you happen to bring your costume for them, we'll use it, but we can make do without it. But you got to pay the money and you got to bring a conductor because we're going to be terrible and probably forget to bring a conductor. And just from looking at the degree work and realizing the importance of that conductor and the opportunity that's being lost, if that conductor was your conductor for all 3 degrees, if that conductor was also the person helping you study your catechism, if that person was, like someone who was guiding you through the process and conducting you through the experience. So what I was trying to get at, and I think fortunately I've now had, several months since the lecture that I gave to refine this, that if I had to do it over as a worshipful master who actually got a full 12 months and 3 degrees to actually bestow, I would focus in on those conductors.
A couple things. First of all, I knew you would be one of the most fascinating guests and an early clubhouse leader for our top 10 podcasts of 2022. Without a doubt, I can just, your character, your personality, you're going to get yourself there. I have heard, and I hope our listener has as well, so many ideas that get shared on this podcast. And that's why I love doing this. But connecting the concept of servant leadership with the role of the conductor and looking at it as that is the worshipful master of the lodge. That's their role, is to be the conductor of the lodge. I've never heard anybody make that connection before. And that really spoke to me as someone who is looking to pursue that road to the east and keep my eye on that chair. Is that's really how I need to be guiding things. Is my job as the master of the lodge is to conduct and to guide the lodge. You had mentioned that there was a specific point during the degree. The brother is demanded, something is asked of him. And I don't want to give too much away, but for those that have gone through it, you know exactly what we're talking about. And you said at that point, either before and after the demand, the role of the conductor also became relevant to you. Why is that?
Previous to the demand, the candidate and now the brother are conducted everywhere that they're going. every step, every action, every genuflect that they take is guided. That is the one point in the first degree where you are left completely alone, and you are instructed to get on out of here, skedaddle. And if this degree work is really on the large enough scale, and your candidates, now EAs, are paying attention, they'll pretty much look around the room, see where they are, get their bearing, and start wandering like a herd of cats back the way that they came. No organization, no structure, no decorum for movement around the lodge, possibly, breaking angles that should never be broken. And they are stopped, and they are corrected, and they are asked the demand, and they are told why the demand was given, and assured that this demand was not given to them to make them feel bad now, although it confuses them. And in my case, I may have actually spoken up and said, I'll tear it out. Just let me know. But they are reminded that there is a message that they need to take away from this. And that is that when they find anyone else in that same haze of confusion, in that same disorientation, that they have a responsibility now as Master Masons, at the time as Masons, to give relief to that haze. And this goes back to one of the very first lessons that I ever learned in Masonry, and that's the difference between relief and charity. And in the non-initiated world, if you give money to a nonprofit, if you hand $1 over to a panhandler, if you are donating time to build a house, that's charity. Masonically, as I have been instructed, that is not charity, that's relief. All you are doing is providing a temporary relief to the problem at the time. Charity is taking that individual and giving them a long-lasting, sustainable relief from that problem. You can throw money at a homeless person, and you can throw an infinite amount of money at them. But people aren't homeless just because they don't have money. People may be between homes, they may be between jobs, they may have mental health issues, they may just choose to be homeless. And if you give a person who prefers to be unhoused and prefers the freedom of being a hobo $1,000, yeah, you've given them a great day, but you're not actually relieving them of anything that was bothering them, because this is a choice that they've made. This is not to say in any way that homelessness is a choice. I am simply saying that Masonically, we see those different steps: relief and charity. So when you see someone in that confusion, as a Mason, you can choose, hey, straighten yourself out, walk towards that door. Okay, you've given them some relief from the problem. Or you can give them charity, and you can explain, here's what's going on. This is why this happened. This is the next step. And you can be a conductor to that individual. And you can acknowledge their problems. You can acknowledge what's happening around them. And you can now share in that burden with them and make the load easier to lift.
Yeah. It's the old story. I've been there, and I know how to get out of this. So follow me, right, and fear no danger.
This is actually a perfect segue to the very first lecture that I ever gave on the similarities between Masonry and the Marine Corps. Now, first, again, for those of you on the Patreon silver level and above, you might notice that I have a chiseled physique and carry myself with great pride, but I have no military experience. I did ROTC and gave it up for a woman. The classic story, my life took me in a different direction. But I've always been fascinated with the fact that the oldest recorded Masonic minutes were held in the Tun Tavern, which is also the birthplace of the Marine Corps. And whether that is serendipity, coincidence, or just the fact that they had really great mead is irrelevant, because what I picked up on was that the very first thing that the Marines do, and almost every boot camp, field training strives to do, is to take their candidate and tear them down and bring them to the base level. You're going to know every basic step of what you need to do, and we're going to teach you how to do it. You may not know what a healthy diet is, but we're going to show you what a healthy diet is. You may not know how to shine your boots, but we're going to show you how to shine your boots. You may not know how to shake a hand, but Masonry will teach you the right way to do it. We take you, we break you down, and then you go through the same door that every person went through before you. You now have a shared experience. Every Marine remembers their training, and every Marine can immediately relate to any other Marine that they went through that same experience. Every Mason has gone through the same experience, and you can now relate with any Mason on that same level. And just like Marines, there's Hollywood Marines and there's real Marines from the East Coast who's slightly different experiences, but the reality is the effect is the same. You all came through the same door, you all took the same obligations, you all had the same demands, and you all had the same reveals. And that shared experience is significant. And it is why, as a Mason, when you see the ring on another person, when you see something in somebody's cubicle and you see that they're a Mason, you immediately want to go, oh, hey, I'm a Mason too, because you now have a shared experience with that person. And it's why we're encouraged to do it.
You made the comment about, wouldn't it be nice if a lodge had assigned a conductor when a brother, first shows an interest in petitioning a lodge, and there's somebody standing there in the wings. And when you think about the role of the conductor, that's typically what happens. Is it's somebody who's on the sideline who comes in as the degree is happening. Unfortunately, a lot of lodges, the role, the person who's going to be the conductor that night, it's sometimes a game time decision, which is really unfortunate. But I can give two examples. I know of one where personally it's come down to almost a fist fight of who's going to get to be the conductor for this particular brother that's coming through, because we were so excited to have him join our lodge and he brought such energy and we just knew he was going to be a great addition to the craft, and everybody wanted to be Johnny's conductor, the night that he was going through, and there weren't enough degrees for us all to get a turn. There's that situation. I think there's a second one, which is something that was special that I got to witness in D.C., different than being in New York State, where the district is a little bit smaller, a little closer, and you have an opportunity that there could be past Grand Masters who are attending a degree that night who volunteer to get to be a conductor and lead a candidate. And to me, I was blown away with that. That was one of the most special memories that I've seen during a degree, is that this new person who's entering our wonderful fraternity is now being led by someone who has held the highest office in the jurisdiction. And you know what? The guy who's coming in has no idea the significance of that moment. That's what I think is also beautiful about the role of the conductor.
I actually had that experience, unbeknownst to me, going through my third degree. I had a moment where there was enough light that I saw a face at the foot of my grave, as it were. And I recognized that I did not recognize this person. And when we came through all of the degrees, I think we actually did 5 or 6 Master Mason degrees that night, and mine was last. When we were finished and we gathered for a little bit of fellowship, immediately after the close of lodge, I looked around and that person was not there. It was a point where I started thinking, like, am I having a Fight Club moment here? Like, what was happening? And I described it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's That's actually the past Grand Master of the District of Columbia, who came in here to help us with a third degree because we had so many people, and he had to leave early because he has a flight to Lebanon in the morning. Like you said, mind blown away that at that point I knew what the Grand Lodge was. I knew the significance of this. We are truly blessed in that respect. And I think those individuals, current and former Grand Lodge officers, and they understand, whether they recognize it as being a conductor or not, they understand that significance.
This has been the Craftsman Online Podcast. I want to thank my guest this week, worshipful brother Jason Lee. Thank you for coming on, Jason.
It's been my pleasure. I mean, we can go another hour if you want.
There's no doubt in my mind you could. And we'll get you back here. If Masonic education is important to you, you can follow us online at craftsmanonline.com. A reminder that new episodes of our podcast are available for download every Monday morning. Until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.